Hey there, it's Holly. I was watching a couple of videos last week and it kind of inspired me to do a video, kind of not really in response exactly, but they kind of inspired me to think about um, optimism, pessimism, and realism, and how kind of overexposure to negative things causes me to be extremely dysregulated. So I need to counteract that with something positive and just finding the balance between, staying informed and not letting all of the information that you're consuming cause you to implode and also, remaining positive without being in denial of what is happening in the world. So the videos that I watched were a video about optimism by Heather at Authentically Me AuDHD and by Neil over at Autistic Not Alien. And I really relate to both of those videos. And I will try to remember to put the links in the description. And those are strangely complementary videos, even though they sound like they, might be opposites. No, they're complementary, kind of in a sweet and salty kind of way. But they are really good ones. So I recommend you go and check those out. You might want to check them out before you watch the rest of this, actually. So I relate to both of those. And Heather, is talking about, finding optimism in such bleak times and it being kind of an act of rebellion. And I love that. And it really feels like it is sometimes when you find moments of joy when the man's trying to keep you down and not allowing that to happen, being the master of your own ship, captain of your own ship, whatever whatever the term is. And then Neil points out that a lot of people sometimes perceive realists as pessimists because it's easy to appear to be pessimistic, I guess, when so many horrible things are going on in the world. And you can have a perfectly realistic view of what's going on in the world and still have people accuse you of being a pessimist simply because there's just such, horrific and devastating things happening in the world. And, when you talk about it, there's, there are things going on that there's no way to put a positive twist on it. There's absolutely no way. And, if you are somehow, still able to remain positive, you almost have to be in a state of denial to be positive about certain things or to stay positive about certain things. But, that is a common misconception sometimes that, the realists do get mistaken for pessimists. The one reason I think is that sometimes we as realists forget that there are positive things happening in the world also. The media just doesn't advertise that. They just, they tend to push the negative stuff out there because that gets ratings and people are more likely to click on negative stories. And stories about other people suffering. And I have really been in a thought loop about why it is that people want to, witness others suffering. And it's a morbid fascination, I guess, but I don't like seeing other people suffer. But I'm still trying to figure out why it is that people do tend to click on things, where the headline or whatever will be something terrible. And you might even click on the headline and the story isn't nearly as bad as the headline was making it out to be. But, sensationalism in this country is, something that's rampant in the media. But when you're scrolling through certain media and you see, video after video that is horrible, and you click on it, then your algorithm just feeds you more horrible stuff. But anyway, I've come to this conclusion. Suffering is inevitable, and therefore something that is relatable. And even if we all may have not have suffered to the degree that other people in other places are, to that degree that they're suffering, suffering is something that we can relate to. And when we have suffered, if you have any kind of heart, empathy, whatever you want to call it, you don't want someone to be alone in their suffering. So you feel like almost obligated to stay with that person in their suffering in that moment. I don't think the human brain was wired to be hammered with, video after video, 60 minutes or whatever of, not 60 minutes, 60 seconds of, one person after another suffering. I don't think that the human brain, no matter how spectacularly wired ours may be, I don't think that we were equipped to handle the degree of, witnessing the kinds of things that are happening and remain regulated. And so it's when you can't look away and you feel this sense of guilt if you do look away, then you're forcing yourself into a state of dysregulation. So what do? Are you going to be, a heartless bastard and look away? Are you going to make the choice to regulate your nervous system and look away and then, appear to be, bad to someone else for looking away and doing what you need to do to regulate? Or are you going to witness it all and implode? And if you can witness it all without imploding or being a little bit depressed or whatever, then I'm not that person. But I just think that maybe we can relate to suffering, so maybe we're more likely to stick around and witness someone's story of their suffering. Even in my own videos, like the view counts, I can look through and see that, for example, the one I did on sensory joys, autistic glimmers, the fun things, that sparkly things that I find joy in, that video got really low view counts, whereas the one I did on suicidality, it has a really high view count. And so that just shows me that even within my own channel, people are choosing to watch a story about suffering over something recounting a story of joy. And I don't think it has anything to do with the thumbnail or the title. I really think it is just that people can relate to suffering more than they can relate to joy. And of course, that makes me sad. And whenever I've scrolled through TikTok and seen, story after story of people suffering, I run across one occasionally in the same geographic region where someone is just living and they are, running around with exuberance and just, showing you like life peeking through the cracks of wreckage and things like that. Or, sharing a recipe with you, and they're sharing happy moments. And I'm so struck by those people haven't let all of the things that they're witnessing on a daily basis for so long, they're not letting that just crush and annihilate their spirit. And they're still able to find things to be positive about. They're still, they're rebels. They are optimistic rebels. They're finding optimism where in the things that you can actually find some bit of positivity, life growing through the cracks in the sidewalk, and I think that that's a really beautiful thing. And it's not up to the morality police to come along and tell that person that they're bad for, enjoying one moment of happiness and positivity when in the midst of all this terrible suffering. But I really applaud them for finding moments to share joy and beauty and happiness in the midst of all that. Now, when it comes to realism being perceived as pessimism, I've been accused of that before, for sure. I've been called the Debbie Downer a lot. And it seems like the times that I was called a Debbie Downer, it was when I pointed out something about reality that people just really didn't want to see. Some examples of this would be at work a few years ago, probably a decade ago. There was a meeting and they said, we're going to develop an app that tells people where available parking spaces are in our city. It's a college town. And on campus, it can be, especially around certain times of the year, it can be quite challenging to find an open space. So they wanted an app developed to show people where to go. And I said, is that a good idea? It sounded like an accident waiting to happen to me. And, they asked, what do you mean by that? And I said, well, you'll have people driving around looking at an app, distracted driving all over a campus where people are likely to just walk out into the crosswalk without looking, also distracted by their phones. So it sounds like it could be dangerous. and it could be, a lawsuit waiting to happen at the very best, and it could, end in a fatality at the very worst. So let's rethink it. I was, perceived as, not having a positive attitude and not being a team player and all of that. And I thought that it was some very important, there were some very important things to consider. And it didn't roll out. And of course, like now, I'm pretty sure that distracted driving is an offense, and you're not supposed to drive without your phone, but I'm not sure, or not supposed to drive with your phone in your hand. So, oh yeah, and I had been told that they'll just pull over and find a parking space. Like, what? These are, not everyone is that patient, and that would just cause traffic jams. So, but anyway, so I was perceived as being a pessimist because I pointed out something that I thought was very obvious and needed to be said. I am not a cheerleader. Not a cheerleader. I may have dressed up as one before, but in high school for a parade. But that's once, and not even for fun sense. So I'm just not a cheerleader type. I'm definitely not going to be someone's bad idea cheerleader. I might be your calculated risk assessor, but not your bad idea cheerleader. Not anyone's ever. I, can be perceived as a pessimist, or definitely not a optimistic cheerleader type. Sometimes, most of the time. So, I guess maybe that's why I like dark humor. It fits with my personality, but I don't think that there's really anything wrong with, pointing out aspects of a situation that could be dangerous, that could, hurt someone or whatever. And, people might confuse that with pessimism, but that is absolutely not what that is. I'm not going to be in denial of possibilities that could cause harm. Just like I'm not going to be in denial of things in the real world that are happening that are currently causing harm. I just can't focus on that, give that all of my attention, because if I do, I will lose myself. I will definitely lose myself if I let it all, let it consume me. And I'm aware of that. And, I'm aware that I have to take steps to keep myself regulated. And to some people that may look selfish, but I have to worry about my nervous system, and they don't. So I just have to do whatever can keep me regulated, or at least some semblance of regulated. So I just have to do everything in moderation, and that includes, consumption of news, and that is negative, and at least offset it with something positive. And I think I've used this quote I can't remember the entire quote, but I think I've quoted Nassim Taleb before, saying that whenever he gives some statistic in his book, Fooled by Randomness, about, if you receive lots of negative news, that it has to be offset by something like 2.5 the magnitude of positive news to just get you back to zero. And this is from behavioral economists. I don't even know what that is. So, but it made sense to me. Like, you're going to find yourself in an emotional deficit if you have to consume way more positive. You have to have more positive vibes than negative vibes, because the negative ones just are harder to counteract. So I attempt to go out of my way to find like positive stories. They're usually about cute animal things, or animal rescues, or something happening somewhere in the world where they care about the environment and they've had some small victory, and focus on some good things for a little while and get out there and enjoy the world while I'm still here and it's still here. And getting out and enjoying nature and finding joy in the present moment whenever I can. Just whenever I find something, find beauty in something. Like right now, there's a little squirrel out on my deck looking for food. And the other day, I noticed one that would come up to the door and kind of do a weird little backflip off of it. And then he would look inside, hopefully, like waiting for me to come outside. And I didn't know if he was doing his little circus tricks that, to try to lure me out there with food, but it was pretty cute. He put on a good show. So he got rewarded with food. So, I just try to find something to be optimistic about, because I really think, that keeping us dysregulated, at least in this country, I think it is the goal of some people and some organizations, and that they profit from our dysregulation. So they cause it, and to, just tell them to F off and go find some joy brings me joy. So I hope that everyone out there can find some sort of joy in whatever brings them joy. Right now, I'm also rereading Assassin's Apprentice by Robin Hobb. I gave up on the Wheel of Time because I got irritated. It seemed like every single female character in those books sniffs loudly every time they're irritated, which caused me to be irritated and did not result in me sniffing loudly. It resulted in me DNRing that series. DNF. DNF. Yep, that too. I will not be resuscitated. Oh, okay. Well, yeah, I meant DNF. Do not finish. Did not finish. But I love Robin Hobb's Realm of the Elderlings, and I read it in 2018, which was happier times for me because one of my dogs was still around back then. And so this is, it may actually overtake A Song of Ice and Fire as my favorite as I look more towards things that are not quite as nihilistic, I guess, if that's the right word. So anyway, I hope that you all have something that brings you a little bit of joy in your life today and tomorrow. So I will try to remember to post those little moments of mine where I find them